Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today's episode, we're going to read a powerful new quote channeling, this one delivered on September 9th, 2023. Quo is an assemblage of higher density beings that are channeled through a group called LL Research that answers spiritual questions. They've really helped me and resonate with me deeply. This is a very recent channeling, and it covers a variety of topics such as gun violence, soul growth, manifestation, and incarnational versus preincarnational will, other self-aspects of self, status of the harvest, transitioning to a new chapter in life, the planetary heart, methods of spiritual seeking, voices of guidance using synchronicity. We begin with Jim channeling. I am Quo, and greet each in the love and the light of the infinite Creator. We are honored to be called to your circle of seeking this afternoon. We thank you for inviting us to speak to those queries which are upon your minds and within your hearts, that you may also move more and more into unity with the one infinite Creator of all things. We would suggest that you use your discrimination to determine the words and concepts that we offer that are of value to you. And if you find some that are not at this time of value, then leave them aside with a second thought. If you will do us this favor, then we can speak more freely and not provide any kind of stumbling block on your spiritual path. At this time, we would ask if there is a query to which we may respond. Question. Quo, I had lunch with author Jeffrey M., and he is on a mission to end gun violence in America and sees the tragedy of that. It's a tragedy affecting all facets of our country and even beyond that. And Jeffrey has felt that it's such a monumental problem that he wanted to enlist the help of those like you, Quo, to help in solving this issue and problem. That is such a problem, and I promise I would request your assistance in this and your guidance and your help. I am Quo, and I'm aware of your query, my brother. This is the type of a situation which is more indicative of the third density illusion in which you all now live and move and have your being. That type of a situation in which there is no true knowledge of the unity of all entities that most people would feel, that then would keep them from engaging in any type of violence, whether by guns, by words, by thoughts, or deeds. You exist within a very difficult experience. It is one which has been called the veil of forgetting, between the conscious and the subconscious mind that keeps entities from seeing the unity of all creation, of how we are all one, and how in that understanding there would be no motivation to cause harm to any. It is a paradox that this veil of forgetting that keeps us in the seeming separation from each other would also provide a means by which we may polarize our consciousness more effectively in the positive sense of service to others. For we have within us, beyond that veil of forgetting, the knowledge in our subconscious mind that we are all one, and those who have begun a spiritual journey feel that impulse of unity, and then are able to move forward with that feeling into a way to express that unity that is able to polarize your consciousness in service to others, where they do see and feel and experience that unity that is within the conscious spiritual seeker. However, you are speaking of those who are not conscious of this process and therefore do not feel that unity. They feel that there is a separation. They feel that there is a power that they need to exert upon others, that they may be exalted in some way, that they may have this power of expression that is used to, in some instances, as you have mentioned, kill others, that there therefore is such a rampant amount of this savaging treatment of other people by the use of the guns and other instruments as well. We would suggest that those who are conscious of their spiritual journeys, conscious of the nature of creation as being made of the one thing, one infinite Creator, to engage in a process of meditation where there is a visualization of the nature of consciousness on planet Earth, one that would include everyone who had any type of inclination to utilize the guns in the murder, the destruction of other entities in their physical vehicles. That this visualization then could be that which surrounds all potential entities that would utilize guns in that way with the love and light of the one Creator, that would reach into their being of the entity, into the heart, into the soul, into every aspect of the being, and engulf it and surround it with the love and light of the one infinite Creator. Each of you is a part of every other entity, a part of the one creator. And by so visualizing this love and light moving into those entities that are constructing the types of death by guns that you speak of, there is a connection so that the love that you send is sent in a manner that is as if the cells of the body were communicating with each other, and that this then would help the body of the entities with the guns and the desire to use them to feel more and more the unity of the creation. Feel it on a subconscious level, feel on a level that would cause them to question their conscious choices of how they relate to their fellow entities, their other selves, on the earth at this time. If this type of meditation can be carried on periodically on a daily basis, it may become a ritual that gains in the power of influencing in a positive sense all such entities that are in need of this realization of the unity of the one creation, each with the other. Is there a follow-up query, my brother? No, thank you, Quo. I am Quo, and we thank you, my brother. Is there another query at this time? Quo, I would like to ask, not really a question, but just what would it be the most important bit of information to know for my soul growth here on Earth? I am Quo, and I'm aware of your query, my sister. We find that you have within your very being an expression of the feeling of the power and presence of the one infinite creator that has manifested itself in various ways throughout your life experience. We would suggest that you, in your meditations, ask that presence of the one creator to move through you in ways that present themselves to you to be of service to others, to other selves, to other facets or portions of the one infinite creator. Within your being is a great deal of the ability to be of this kind of service that will present itself to you if you ask the creator to do that. And this is a manner in which you can polarize your consciousness in the positive sense so that you become more and more that which you seek, the one infinite creator. This is the journey of all entities upon the planet, and this is a journey which we feel that you have traveled a good distance upon. And we would suggest that you ask for more ability and opportunity to utilize those skills which have been given to you. Ask the creator, and the creator shall respond. Is there a follow-up query, my sister? No, thank you, Quo. I am Quo, and we thank you, my sister. At this time, we shall transfer this contact to the one known as Austin. We are those of Quo. I am Quo, and now with this instrument. As we settle in with this instrument, we would like to share a short comment, and that is that we are greatly joyed and honored to witness this group come through and share in the way that you have shared this afternoon. We find such a vibrancy in the conversation and swelling of open-hearted energy, and being able to connect and witness what has been called synchronicities of the sharing. And we would simply emphasize to all present that this very moment of coming together and of connecting and sharing openly is no accident, and is of divine design that you all, we correct this instrument, that you are all here and connecting in this specific configuration. And we encourage you to take heart in this fact and carry this knowledge with you as you depart from this circle. At this time, we would ask if there is a query to which we may speak. I have one. My name is R. and Quo. What I'd like to ask about is related to the idea that as creators, we are co-creating the entire universal experience, and at the same time, the experience we are having here on the planet. And the question I have is, many times when we start doing this work, we could get stuck on trying to manifest something that does not happen as we thought. An example would be trying to have a baby and then maybe not having a baby, or trying to have a baby and desiring for maybe a male and then getting a female. I'm wondering, what is the mechanism behind when those desired manifestations don't manifest? I guess that would be the first part. Like, what's the mechanism behind that? And the second would be in situations like that where there is conflict that arises. If you desire something and another person needs to conform and they don't, or maybe not need to conform, another person needs to participate in a certain way and they don't. How do you reconcile that? And what would be the best way of moving forward? As often as we see, when that is the case, then things like war and violence is what ensues on the planet. And so, what gives? I am Quo, and I'm aware of the query, my brother, and we thank you for this elaborate and rich query, for we feel that it touches upon a very central aspect of your journey as spiritual seekers. And it particularly touches upon an aspect of the culture of the what has been called New Age community, of which circles like this are a part. And we sense that the question that you have posed also touches upon a great curiosity, or even a sense of despair that some seekers may have when they learn about their innate power as co-creators. And yet, when they subsequently experience catalyst that points out to them that there is contrast to what they expect or desire, this can seem in many cases to almost be paradoxical. For if each individual contains the infinite power of the Creator within them, why then is it apparent to them that they cannot manifest this infinite potential to create exactly the circumstances of experience that they desire? This touches deep into the nature of your journey, particularly within the third density, for in this density, it is intentionally designed that you as individuals do not have a full awareness of your connection with the one infinite Creator. You have voluntarily and of your own free will chosen to incarnate within such an environment where it is akin to darkness, and you are armed with but a candle to explore this darkness. And yet you find, as you begin your spiritual journey, that there is truth within the great infinite power you contain within you. We will begin by touching upon the idea of manifestation, as is such a great interest among many seekers. For we find that it can be a very appealing notion, particularly for one who has lived a life where suffering and struggle and a lack of fulfillment have defined their seeking up to that point. Then upon learning of the concept of manifestation and feeling the power of the truth of such a notion, they may then free themselves of the former struggles that they have found upon their journey. This is very understandable, and we empathize with this notion that one wishes to escape or perhaps design a more perfect life for themselves so that it is no longer one of struggle but one of fulfillment and abundance. And we also realize that many who learn of this concept of manifestation find confirmation in its reality. For once one learns of the power of one's thoughts, one can readily witness the effect of one's thoughts upon their reality. But you ask about those times and those instances where one might hold a great desire and attempts to manifest a particular outcome or a particular circumstance, but that circumstance does not come to be. This seeming paradox or complication arises from the tricky notion of free will as you may understand it within the third density. For when you incarnate into the third density, you have of your own free will chosen to take upon yourself a veil that hides not only your connection with the Creator, but also hides your connection with an essential aspect of your own self, that which we have called the unconscious mind. And while you may consciously have an idea of what you desire and what circumstances you feel may be best for your own journey, there is an entire aspect of your being which is much more vast than your conscious awareness of yourself, that has perhaps alternative desires. And even beyond that, your higher self, or even your mind-body-spirit complex totality, has an influence upon this being of your unconscious mind, so that your greater desire that you choose when you incarnated into this density is still active within your incarnation. And when you feel that you desire certain things within your life, some of those may truly be compatible with the greater desire of spiritual growth and evolution towards the one infinite Creator. But some may not, shall we say, be compatible with the greater desire, for it is through the idea and to the manifestation of catalyst that this evolution is possible. And if you as beings within the third density were able to design your circumstances to the exact specificity that you desire, then the catalyst would fail to do its proper job and cause you to seek within a variety of experiences. Instead, you would simply feel a constant sense of fulfillment and abundance. And yet, within the third density, there is opportunity for the opposite experiences. And within those experiences is an even greater opportunity to learn of one's spiritual nature, of one's innate connection with the Creator. For it is not just in those situations and circumstances where one is happy and fulfilled that one has a connection with the Creator. The Creator is ever present, and in each moment, whether it is a moment where one's manifestation has come true, or in a moment where one's manifestation ceases to come true, the Creator is still present. And those situations where the desire has not manifested itself are just as equally important and valid for the entity within third density to seek and to find the love in that moment, to find the intelligent infinity that is at play in that moment. We find that the discussion prior to us joining this circle plays a key role in understanding, for it is the faculty of faith that allows one to understand that though some circumstances may not play out as one has desired, that there is still a divinity within them, and that each moment is designed with a divine precision to allow each entity to experience that which the entity needs in order to use this experience as catalyst for growth, and reflect upon the experience so that one may see the working of the Creator, and further the working of the self as the Creator within that experience. It can be in analyzing these experiences where the desire has failed to manifest that one may glimpse at the deeper part of the oneself, those unconscious mechanisms that may have played into the creation of this experience. And one may learn more of themselves by experiencing something that they feel they did not desire. But once the experience has passed and one has utilized it for one's spiritual growth, you may look back and finally understand and realize that it was the experience that you needed. And because of that, it was the experience that, though you did not realize it in your attempt to manifest a different experience, was ultimately what you desired. And this ultimate desire is what you carried with you into this incarnation but have forgotten. And it is through these experiences that you have an opportunity to remember that greater desire and have an opportunity to cultivate the faith and the love that will ultimately guide you home to the Creator. To speak further of the second aspect of your query, you have asked how to reconcile the notion of other entities perhaps not adhering to certain circumstances that one has attempted to manifest or desires to experience. And we can simply add to our previous response that this is due to the notion that each entity within the third density carries with them the divine faculty of free will. And it is indeed a natural consequence of this that one individual's free will may be incompatible with another individual's free will. And this seeming paradox may be worked with when one attempts to understand the working of a greater free will. That will that might be underneath the individual's unique and contradictory expression of free will to that greater expression of the Creator's will. And in analyzing the conflict that arises from free will having conflict with other free will, one may follow that thread deeper to that greater will. Is there a follow-up to this query, my brother? Yes, Quo, and thank you much for that answer. The follow-up query is, it does then sound like there is a probability that your pre-incarnated desires, the ones that the vast aspect of yourself is still very much aware of, can change. And I'm asking because, let's say in third density, I'm very much aligned with the vast aspect of myself, and all my desires are compatible with my pre-incarnated desires. Because of the nature of third density and dealing with contrast or experiencing contrast, is there a probability then that in trying to experience those desires, the pre-incarnate one changes, or just as a result? I am Quo, and I'm aware of the query, my brother, and we find this is an interesting but difficult query to address within the framework and the language that has been born of your space-time awareness. For we find within your query an attempt to reconcile the notion of that incarnate free will and the pre-incarnative free will. We can simply point to the idea that prior to incarnation, the entities of a certain level of development working with their higher selves may design a certain desire or energetic momentum for that incarnation, but there is no guarantee from that perspective of that incarnating entity that any specific situation will come to pass. Rather, certain energetic configurations that might manifest in different ways are imprinted upon the entity and its path. And these energetic configurations might have within them certain probabilities or possibilities that can manifest in slightly different or even vastly different ways depending on the path that the incarnation has taken up to that point. So you may see that the incarnated desire may seem to have an influence upon the pre-incarnated desire by way of having gone a certain way. But the pre-incarnate self is mostly aware, you can say, of the possibility of that shift or that change, and it is built into the possibility-probability vortex of that entity's incarnation. Is there a follow-up to this query, my brother? No, thank you. I appreciate your responses. I am Quo, and we thank you, my brother. At this time, we would transfer the contact to the one known as Gary. We are Quo. We are those known to you as the principle of Quo, and we blend our energies with this instrument in exercising his voice, that we may be available once again for your queries at this time. We would ask this circle of seeking if there are any questions to which we may respond. We are those known to you as Quo. Quo, I have a question. I've always thought of other self as basically my fellow mankind. Can other self first and foremost mean our egoic subconscious thoughts? If I can't forgive myself down to the level of subconsciousness by doing shadow work and things like that are required to do that, then how can I ever get to the level of forgiving people in my life? We are those of Quo, and have received and appreciate your query, my sister. Indeed, we would say it is a salient and astute point of observation and insight that you make in understanding that work in the consciousness begins with the self. There is much work in the way of interpersonal relationship or relationship between the self and group, self and society, self and planet, self and all beings, animate or inanimate, incarnate or discarnate. But upon that greater field of relationship which you enjoy between yourself and other beings is projected the inner reality and inner experience, which will include those things that you named, such as the shadow, the vast subconscious portions of the self's unique and particular blockages and imbalances and activations, all which transpires within the sanctum of the self's beingness, all that is your catalyst to work upon to bring to the conscious awareness that it may be known and that it may be accepted. There is not a sequence of work per se, as these things may happen in tandem, as work with other self may be work upon oneself and vice versa. Many are these stories among your peoples of forgiveness being exercised without communication to the forgiven entity, having manifestation upon that relationship simply by the purity and the strength of the inner work which has been undertaken. Yet it is still wise to understand that the work you do with others and how you show up in the world and the quality of your radiance or blockage is the fruit of the work you do within the self, the quality and quantity of time and intention that you spend and cultivate in the working of self-reflection, in the asking of the self the questions and the probing and mining and analyzing of the day's experiences and indeed the weeks and the lifetime of experiences. This material which arises within you and within all beings does not get processed and brought and made conscious that it may be understood and loved and transmuted until the self directs the conscious attention and intention upon this material in one way or another. And in that work, depending upon the entity's unique sensibilities, it may indeed be helpful to see inner relationships as you were describing, to apply the understanding of other self to those voices and energies within. Indeed, the adult may relate to its childhood self, that is, those memories and those wounds and those things which were not understood or perhaps traumatic to the young self, which still live within the self, perhaps siphoning off an energy from the wholeness, from the full expression of beingness. The adult entity may reach out, so to speak, and make a bridge to this inner self, as if it were another self on some level, not alien or foreign to the self, but as an entity of sorts, not autonomous completely from the self, but perhaps somewhat split off, we may say, but nonetheless part of the self, the larger self, the work of spiritual evolution as the self moves into the higher rays, particularly the blue ray energy center, is this practice and art of integration. The self seeks to integrate those parts of the self which have not been unified and synthesized into the heart for all forgiving love, where it may be understood and embraced as part of the self. The telos of this work is the recognizing of distinction within the self, between that part of the self which is within the shadow, which may have experiences of, shall we say, insecurity or anger or inadequacy, or those parts of the self which may be trapped in the past at some point in one's incarnational journey, where hurt was received and incurred, where betrayal or injury or cruel treatment the self may have been the recipient of, to discover these aspects of self, and while recognizing distinction and difference, to dissolve the boundaries and the split-off distances within the being's energy field, such that discordant notes may blend in harmony with all the notes of the self, such that self makes melody. There is a balance, as ever, between the work of conscious exercise of the will and the work of surrender and acceptance and trust of what is, of what wishes to move through one, of what wishes to make itself known to one. The self which embarks upon this work, with what it may conceive as a master plan or formula, may find some limited success, shall we say, in this work, for it is ever a dance between this conscious work and this deep inner listening and sensitivity. But in summary, my sister, it can be certainly helpful to reach out to portions of the self as if they were another self, and to hear what it is they have to share with you, to invite them into the sanctum of your heart, for part of the primary mechanism that perpetuates an unintegrated and unhealed self and a lack of conscious wholeness of the self is this resistance, if not outright inability, to look at those other portions of the self which are painful, whether the self represses it completely such that it is unknown entirely to the conscious mind, or the self engages in avoidant mechanisms or other forms of resistance or escape. The mere act of turning the attention to truly feel what one feels, to spend time with what is happening within the self, is the act of relating which melts, or we should say begins the process which begins to melt those divisions, such that those wayward or blocked or split off portions of self may return to their home within your heart, and the being made whole in the light of the Creator. As always, we advise to begin and end all such work with an eye toward the Creator, for you are not on any level a separate self. This separation, which seems so real and solid to you, is the illusion. Is there a follow-up to this query, my sister? No, quo. That answer had much depth and weight. Thank you. We thank you, my sister. Is there another query to which we may respond? We are those of quo. Question. Yes, channeled statements from years past to, I suppose, fairly currently have stated that the harvest of souls on Earth is a surprisingly small number. Are you able to comment on the current status or the general movement of souls incarnated on this Earth at this time, and how improvements or evolution is going? We thank you, my sister, for this query. This moment of harvest is large upon our hearts, shall we say, for our beingness here with you at this time is focused to a great extent upon assisting with this process, which we have called harvest. And though not always apparent to your lives or to your society at large, it is the harvest which is now among the biggest stories, shall we say, unfolding, though it looks or emerges in many different guises that do not necessarily outwardly speak of planetary transition. Whether those issues which are asking for nation states and societies to find cooperation in order to navigate and respond to, such as that which is known to you as climate change and the climate crisis upon the planet, and the increasing exploitation and degradation of your planetary sphere. This is connected inextricably to the harvest and is a potent catalytic mechanism that, if understood, would accelerate this process in inviting the more tribal or provincial definitions of self to expand outward to the global community, that the circle of compassion may expand from one's needs, whether self-centered or true, from one's family and one's associates, to the understanding that we all, that is, those of third density, rise and fall together, that what happens to one on one side of the planet happens to the other on the other side, that you are all interdependent and sharing, though largely unknown to your conscious minds, in interbeing. As to how this is going at the moment, we may speak only in limited ways due to the limitations of this conscious channeling and this instrument, and due to the boundaries of free will, and due to the fact that this process is very much ongoing, though having made movement and progress since those times when we first began this work of channeling, as you say, Confederation sources through this group and its predecessor. We may indicate that many more have indeed made the choice to serve others, to expand that definition of selfhood, to see the Creator within others and within the self. It has probably been made known to you in this circle, as synchronicity has brought you to one person or another, to one circumstance or another, that there are many who are seeking outside of the conventional pathways, out of the box, you may say. There are many who are awakening with questions and with alternative models of seeing the world that are not your traditional forms of the economic being or the warlike being, but which see a necessity for another way of life and begin to magnetize their patterns, that they may themselves not simply entertain them as alternative, as an interesting thought, but may embody this alternative and may ask themselves, what is my part in this great play? What voice or expression or service or gift may I bring to this moment? And even more deeply, who am I? Part of that sinkhole of indifference, as it's been described, which has been chronic in your planetary populations, is the absence of this question on a deep level outside of the more shallow but understandable needs and wants, whether that be survival or economic gain or the procreation or procreative activities of your world, the enhancement of status and so forth. There is a mass degree of sleep, and in that sleep is a mass degree also of suffering to self and to other and to planet. But there are those, as we are saying, as are known to you personally, who like you are waking, those who are seeking this question perhaps further upon the path, having made contact with those deeper layers of the self, such that you have a greater foundation of this self-knowledge and of your trajectory and how you may be a vessel with your unique gifts. But we may say your world presently is still one of considerable sorrow, as it is apparently to your ears, even more so 1,000-fold to ours. Many are the cries of suffering. Many are the needs for solace, for community, for liberation from the shackles of perhaps an oppressive society, economically or religiously or in other ways, or their oppression that lives on within the self, the inequality between those of the masculine and those of the feminine genders, the treatment generally of your second density brothers and sisters. Though we are not here to catalog those ways in which pain is generated and reverberated around this world, we indicate only that there is great work for you to do, you in this circle, and you who hear these words, and you whether or not you find this philosophy as a guide stone, who simply have recognized that it is the absence of love which generates so much of your division and war and inequality, and it is the discovery and embodiment and practice of love that is the primary tool of the healing of your world, the pain that lives in the chasms between you and other selves. And it is that key which opens the portal for the harvest to manifest. That is the fourth density to manifest and be born into your world. Each of you and each upon your planet stands at the door, which when opened will birth the new world, or which will remain shut, wanting to open against the blockage of the heart center, of the planetary heart center, and the individual heart center. So my friends, we would close with this instrument by reminding each that it is an incorrect perception to look at the day's headlines and the great disharmony in the world and feel too small or too insignificant to have effect. My friends, we wish to remind you that you each are agents for and of love. And as you forgive yourselves and as you forgive others and you find the Creator in all things, you are affecting the world mightily, perhaps even more strongly than the recent most news of what the latest dictator in your world is up to in their work of polarity. And the more that you open heart links with other open hearts, the greater the magic of healing and synchronicity. And that property which is greater than the sum of its parts may manifest, and wonders and miracles may abound. At this time we transfer our contact to the one known as Jim. We are those of Quo, Jim channeling. I am Quo, and to begin with this instrument, we would ask at this time if there is another query to which we may respond. Yes, I have one. This is W. I guess my query is, what wisdom and guidance might there be for me as I end pretty much the past 50 years of work that I've done in both ending it and celebrating it, and then shifting to a work to provide personal guidance and assistance to persons who are trying to make the journey personally. So I'm asking what wisdom with guidance that I might end one and begin the other. I am Quo, and I'm aware of your query, my brother. You have been on a journey full of service to the one Creator, and many who have been members of your church. This journey is one which has been a heart-opening experience for you, and which now offers you to take another step upon the same journey of seeking to serve the one infinite Creator, and all those who come to you with the request to aid them in their own journeys. For you see, you are the Creator, speaking to the Creator in the same language of love. This, though seemingly a different journey, is yet an acceleration of the same journey. This is the means by which you yourself not only serve others and the Creator, but you experience an expansion of your own ability to allow the love of the Creator to move through your heart, through your soul, through your very being, to be reflected out into the world around you, so that not only will you be able to serve those who come to you as individuals, but your service will be magnified each time you serve one. For the serving of one at your level of experience is also the serving of all, for all are one. And we would suggest to you that you give praise and thanksgiving to the one infinite Creator within each being that you serve, so that your heart remains open, magnified, and able to allow you to become the Creator as you serve the Creator. Is there a further query, my friend? I have a question. You mentioned the planetary heart center. Where is this, and is it possible, important, or helpful for us to be in physical proximity to this area? I am Quo, and I'm aware of the basic nature of your query. May we ask you to repeat the area that you spoke of, or the quality where is the planetary heart center mentioned earlier in this circle? I am Quo, and we thank you, my sister. The planetary heart center is of a kind of beingness that your Mother Earth has throughout her whole being. Your Mother Earth, or Gaia, is that consciousness of the love of the Creator that has manifested itself as what you see as the planet Earth that has the qualities of a planetary sphere. However, as your Mother Earth has been interacting with her third density population of children for nearly 75,000 years, now there has been the ability to feel and express this planetary love within each portion of its being, each portion of the Earth itself, and within the population of the Earth, so that there is a unifying factor to the planetary center of love that includes the entire Earth, her population, and the movement of the population into a higher level of consciousness that will hopefully be manifested as the graduation into the fourth density of love and understanding. Is there a further query, my sister? So, I understand that the heart center is omnipresent in all living beings on Earth. I am Quo, and I'm aware of your query, my sister, and this is indeed true, for as the consciousness of the Earth itself has been able to manifest this love center, it shares it as the love of any mother for any child would be shared with a child. Is there a further query, my sister? No, thank you. I am Quo, and we thank you, my sister. At this time, we will transfer this contact to the one known as Austin. For those of we are Quo, and are once again with this instrument. May we ask if there's another query from this circle which we may respond? Yes. This is W. What other disciplines might we incorporate in our daily activities if we seek to know, come before the Lord, and do our meditation? What other methods are there to the madness? I am Quo, and I'm aware of the query, my brother. We of the Confederation of Planets, in service to the one infinite Creator, have an omnipresent message, you may say, of one particularly important discipline that you mentioned within your query, and that is the opportunity and faculty of meditation. And further related to this is prayer and contemplation. For these three activities, while similar in nature, are different ways of coming into relationship with the one infinite Creator, and are the portal through which one may begin to manifest the presence of the Creator within their being and within their lives. We sense that your query is focused more upon those disciplines beyond that which would be the prerequisite of meditation, and we may say that there are many multitudes of disciplines that one may adopt within their life in order to continue upon the path of manifesting the presence of the Creator. Each individual will have individual types of disciplines and opportunities available to them that can only be known to the self through first coming into a deep relationship with the self, and through developing a mentorship with the Creator, which may then guide the self to those things that might further one's own individual journey with the Creator. These may take the form of more specific spiritual practices, more specific magical practices, or perhaps even more, you may say, mundane or earthly practices, such as the care of the physical body, the exercise of the physical body, and other types of physical activities that, while may not seem to be related initially to one's relationship with the Creator, are an expression, if done with the intention and the heart of serving the Creator, are indeed a deep form of expression of that relationship. And so we cannot guide specifically, you may say, except for to suggest that within one's meditation, if one is seeking further types of disciplines and seeking further ways to come into relationship with the Creator, an expression of the Creator, that one simply asked for guidance. This guidance will appear perhaps not in an obvious way, but if one is careful and listens to the subtleties of the way in which the Creator may speak, then one will become aware of the next step to take, and the discipline that one may adopt within their life path to continue the development of this relationship. Is there a follow-up query, my brother? No. I am Quo, and we thank you, my brother, for this query. Is there another query in the circle to which we may respond? Question. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask this, but is there any guidance on how I could, or why I have this voice outside of my head and it's been going on for 6 years? Or is there any steps I can take to get rid of it? I am Quo, unaware of the query, my sister. There are limits, you may say, to how specifically we can address this particular catalyst within your life, for it is indeed a dynamic, a dance that has been given to you by the self in order for you to explore. And through some, you might say, struggle, come to understand how such an experience might guide you and relate to you upon your spiritual path. We can say that such an experience is intended and intentional for you, and that an attempt to come to terms with it through not only the relationship with that voice, as you call it, but also through other means, such as attempting to quiet your own mind and attempting to find a solace of silence within the self that might be separate from this voice. You may discover within the self a more internalized voice, something that you recognize as coming from within the self rather than outside of the self. For as you have spoken this afternoon, all external perception is simply a reflection of the internal being. And so the fact that this voice seems to come from outside of the self, or seems to be other than the self, is a hint at what it might be attempting to reveal to you upon your path, and is asking you to discover the internal correlation to what this voice represents. Is there a follow-up query, my sister? No, thank you very much. I am Quo, and we thank you, my sister. At this time, we will transfer the contact to the one known as Gary. We are Quo. We are those of Quo. And once again, visit this circle having completed this instrument's re-challenging process. Is there a query to which we may offer our philosophy? We are those of Quo. Quo, could you speak on how we can use the occurrence of synchronicities in our life to help further our spiritual progress? We are those of Quo and have received and appreciate this query, my sister. It is an important and often elating and fascinating portion of any seeker's journey, for it is the happening of things unexpected, the connecting of things which seem, at least statistically, to be improbable if not impossible. And as the self can become numb to the wonder around the self, sleepwalking through a day, habituated to its patterns, lost in its own internal loops, along comes synchronicity, and a glimpse into a greater coordinating intelligence becomes available. And the self is lifted momentarily from its patterns to get that small glimpse behind the curtain, within which all things are connected, and where there is an immense intelligence undergirding the self's experience. How may the seeker make use of this synchronicity, you ask? The self may be sensitive to the message of that synchronicity, perhaps first by avoiding interpretation as best as possible, for your interpretation making machines, that is the conscious mind, and instead leaning into the feeling tones of the experience, taking it into the meditation, sitting with and asking of the self what this may mean, which is not to invite the writing of a grand story per se, or the inflation of the personality whereby one envisions oneself as in a state of greatness, above all, shining upon the hill, toward which others may look upward, but instead to recognize the guidance at work, and asking the self how the self feels, what may be an appropriate response, what is unlocked or triggered within the self. Does this point perhaps a relationship that may be pursued to a subject that may be explored? Or is this an affirmation of the path which one is on? Synchronicity, while perhaps having other agents at play, is ultimately a function of the self. Not likely the conscious mind, though the conscious mind does have a part to play with the higher self, the mind-body-spirit complex totality, and the subconscious self. Synchronicity is unique for the entity who experiences it, that is to say, uniquely crafted for the entity. And we may suggest that as the path deepens and the intentions are purified, that one may even have more occasion for the encountering of this synchronicity. For the self is seeking outside the bounds of consensus reality and seeking to make itself available to that greater intelligence. But synchronicity may indeed even arrive at the inception point of the spiritual journey. It may be a chance occurrence that seemed improbable, if not impossible, that awakens the self and invites them onward, or triggers that process of seeking the truth, of asking questions, of broadening the containers of mind to see that the universe is not the materialistic mechanistic form that is generally prevalent in the worldview of neurosciences, but that there is so much more which is unseen and which is unheard. At base, we would counsel a trust of synchronicity, what it may mean only the self can unpack for the self. but synchronicity may be fruitfully considered a small hint from the Creator, not one necessarily that has definitive meaning, as if it were created by an entity external to the self and communicated to the self with this pre-given meaning, but rather it is intended or being suggestive meant to stimulate the self's processes, because it is only by the exercise of the self's free will that the journey may be undertaken, and the self must find its own meaning in all that transpires. May we ask if there was a follow-up to this query, my sister? No, thank you for the clarification. We thank you, my sister. At this time, we transfer our contact to complete this circle to the one known as Jim. We are those known to you as Quo. I am Quo, and am again with this instrument. We would ask if there is another query at this time to which we may respond. As we seem to have exhausted the queries, we would thank each entity gathered here this afternoon for your queries. These are means by which not only do we feel hopeful that we may help you in your spiritual journey, but they also inspire us on our spiritual journey. For to be able to serve you is to be able to know what it is like to exist within the difficult third density illusion. We are most grateful to you to be able to offer our humble opinions in answer to your queries. At this time, we take our leave of this instrument and this group. We love you in that love and light in which we found you, for always are we there with you and the one Creator. We are known to you as those of Quo, Adonai Vasu Borgas. And that concludes this amazing channeling. There's so many different things that we can pull from this and think about. I'm particularly drawn to the discussion about manifestation, something that Quo rarely talks about. And in many cases, Quo sort of treats manifestation like it's a service to self-activity. And they talk about upon the spiritual path, there's this paradox that occurs. When you realize your power, that you are the Creator, but when things don't come out the way that you imagine them, and there are deeper reasons for that, a part of the subconscious mind, that you have desires that you're not aware of, but also you have pre-incarnative decisions that you made that influence your manifestations. It gives you a sort of rough idea why this paradox occurs. And we are living within third density to have these catalysts that come up. And these catalysts push us towards the spiritual awakening that we're attempting to experience, that we chose to come into this incarnation to experience. And that is why sometimes manifestations don't work out the way we thought so. And if we did live in that perfect society, which is the fourth density, where whatever we think we manifest immediately and everything works out perfectly for us, then it's working against why we came here, even though we have that power. And that's why the system is set up so it doesn't always work out for us, particularly when it's working against our own deeper pre-incarnative intentions. Great question also about the status of what they call the harvest, or our transition into the new earth. And yes, our hearts are closed. Our hearts remain closed, but more and more people are opening their hearts and opening themselves to the experience of others. If you're hearing people talk about consciousness, awakening, spiritual awakening, but those people are generally only talking about themselves or how they can help themselves out, then that is not necessarily talking about this harvest. This harvest is when we come to the choice of being of service to others and we move outside of ourselves as a group. It's something to ponder. Lots of stuff that we can pull from this, including the discussion of gun violence as well as the planetary heart. So I'd love to know your favorite part of this channeling, and if it brought up any thoughts or questions for you. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. I would be delighted if you checked out my art. You can find it at www.newearth.art. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.